So we've got that diamond, and that diamond has 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, has 9 points on it.
8, 9, yeah.
Each of those points represents a spiritual gate. Scripture talks about, the Lord said, let us separate the waters from the waters, the firmament above the earth from the firmament that's below the earth. So what you see is, remember I talked about how that darkness, the Lord separated the light from the darkness. So now as you look at each ring, you've got spaces where there's light, and you have a defining line, which is the darkness that separates that light and the dark. So the Lord defined even more this, and in between those layers, if you're looking at that sphere, you've got those points where the spiritual gates will connect. They run vertically to the heavens above and to the earth below and to the realms underneath. So each of these rings begins to represent the different heavenly realms that you have. They're not parallel universes. We're talking, a multi-dimensional earth that you've got, 7 realms simultaneously existing together, where, beings are existing within those realms and operating within them. They're separated. They can move in and out in those realms. And they do that through those spiritual gate access points. And you have more than those 9, but I want to focus on those major 9 tonight. But, Scripture talks about, this expanse, and later in the book of Job, it talks about the floodgates. And these were the gates that separated the waters that were above the earth and, from the sky, from the ones that were below the earth, separated the waters that were even below the ocean levels from that ocean water. So these floodgates or spiritual gates were originally filled with the waters, just like the Lord said that, he had waters and separated them. And that's actually in verse 6. He says, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. So besides the spiritual gates now, we begin to look at the other things that the Lord is creating. And he starts to talk about the day and night, and that, they represented the light and the darkness. And the lights were meant to give light to the earth and to govern the day and night. Now, this represents, because the Lord's word goes beyond just the literal, like, we're talking about the physical earth. We're also talking about the spiritual realms. So the Lord created lights, angelic beings, and part of their job was to light the earth and to govern the day and the night. Now, they were not to govern the earth, only to govern the light and the day and the night. So the Lord literally stationed them at these spiritual gates. Some of them, the demonic generals, each have a spiritual gate that they are in charge of governing. But it's important to understand that they do not govern the earth. That was what God gave that dominion over man and woman. So, as we start to look at this more, you know, we're really talking about these realms, these gates, and you know, each of those 9 gates, main gates that we're talking about, are governed by an angelic principality. And we have the Lord has distinguished the angelic beings by rank, by power, kind of like a military structure. Yep. You have your generals, you've got your, you know, lieutenants, your colonels, your commanders, and then you've got your soldiers. Okay, so as we're looking at those letters, you know, we're thinking back to the breath of God and the song that he's singing. Each of those letters or symbols represents both a demonic and an angelic being. And it tells you their positions. So in the diamond, where we have the 9 spiritual gates, you know, Kabbalah has taken that, you know, so you can think of like the Kabbalah ladder. Mm-hmm. But those demonic generals, they, you know, that middle part shows that they were close, that they operate those spiritual, the big spiritual gates. They're close to the throne of God. Wow. And they're close to men and women. And that's their area of operation. As you look at the space around that, you know, we see that there's also a triangle. Okay. This is a demonic being that he's not necessarily an archangel, but his it's Leviathan. And he was given domain not over a specific spiritual gate, but over the waters. So you have his dominion is over all the waters, both the waters above, the waters below, the waters on the earth. You know, past that triangle now, we've got some spaces, and you see letters in those spaces, 4 letters. Those represent the 4 archangels. So starting at the top right, you have Michael, and then underneath him, you have Raphael, and then the top left, you have Gabriel, the bottom left, you have Uriel. Wow. So those are their areas of domain. That little middle ring now, you get into, you know, the commanders, and then around them, and you know, it starts to disperse. So you've got the principalities, you've got the rulers, you have the authorities, and then you have the spiritual forces. Okay, so that's how that you just keep going through those layers, and it breaks it down into, you know, who's where. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you know, I like this. We kind of see there's the lines that go, you know, straight down the middle in both directions, and breaks this chart into 4 different quadrants. Okay. And that's important because each of those beings is given dominion in a quadrant. And again, you have to think, you know, those quadrants are globally. So, you know, they go outside of the earth into the heavenlies and the lower realms. So you've got, you know, northeast, southwest, you've got that globally. You've also got it by continent, and you also have it, you know, by country. Each country can be broken into 4 quadrants. So, you know, they're going to rule their assigned area. So what we've established here, what I'm trying to show you, is the dominion that God gave over the land, the water, and the spiritual gates. Wow. And Solomon, you know, began to break down this code in his book, The Key of Solomon's. Yes. You know, we said each letter also represents a number. Mm-hmm. So as you look up, letter A is also the number 1. So, if you want to know which spirit that is, you can look in the Key of Solomon, and that's going to tell you which spirit that is, and you'll know exactly, that spirit is going to be, over the quadrant that he's over. And so you can begin to see, okay, A is, I believe that's in the, where is it? Over here in the eastern quadrant, northeast, we'll say. So A's in the northeast quadrant. Well, who else is in that northeast quadrant that's going to be above him? You're going to have, he's going to be under ultimately the domain of Michael, the archangel. And then, according to those 9 spiritual gates, he's also going to be under the control of Abaddon, who's at the top, like at the number 12 spot in that middle section. If we're thinking of those layers as clocks, I should mention that. We've got 3 clocks kind of there. So he's going to be under the control of Abaddon, but also, because that layer connects into that middle gate, he's going to be under the control of both Baal and Ashtaroth as well. So he will have 3 principalities that he has to, that he's in conjunction with or has to be connected to.